All right, we are recording. Welcome to the second episode of Aiight with Layi and me, Manny. Hopefully, you got a chance to get to know us the first episode, because I know all you listeners out there, whoever you are, listen to the first episode. And this episode, we will be talking about all types of stuff. Including what's going on in politics, what's going on in the world, and then we'll also just go off onto tangents about random things. But we are excited to do that. We have a limited amount of time. I think. Are we waiting? Are we? Is Amelita? Is she dictating this when she wakes up? For those who don't know, Amelita is Lai's daughter, who's very cute and has a lot of attitude. And hopefully she takes a nap long enough for us to finish this.
We'll see. We'll find out.
Yeah, we will find out. But yeah, so I don't know. A bunch of stuff's been going on. What have you thought about the last week of everything?
The last week of everything. I mean, where do we start? We had the town hall that, I don't know what I have to call it, an S show, a shit show. Can we curse? Whatever.
Yes, a shit show.
It was a shit show.
I feel like they curse on television now. Like, yeah. I feel like I've heard shit be said on CNN now because people are so frustrated with.
I know the funny thing about that is, the way you have someone like Wolf Blitzer, who is the least interesting person on TV. Like, there is a 75% chance that Wolf is a robot. Like, he doesn't actually have blood in him.
He looks the same age. He's looked the exact same age for the past 20 years.
Exactly. Like, the very first time I saw him on TV, I'm like, oh, that guy is, I don't know, 75 years old, and he stayed 75 ever since. But yeah, like, I feel like every now and then I would just hear people trying, I don't know if they're trying to be edgy or cool and then they will use like curse words like, oh, shit show or
shithole country. I remember that was like all the newscasters felt like they were getting away with something. They were like, yeah, he said it was a shithole country. Like when Trump said that, I felt like everyone was saying shithole. Like all of a sudden shit was just allowed to be said on broadcast television because I guess the president said it.
I know, all of a sudden. I mean, I think the very first time I felt like they started, that they thought they were being edgy was when they would call Trump a liar or something like that. And I'm like, ooh. That is not like
a liar.
I know.
I don't understand when people get so offended by stuff like that. I don't get it. If someone lies, you're a liar. Big deal. It's not the end of the world.
So yeah, I mean, I think I talked about this a little bit during the last show, and I never quite understood the whole thing about, I feel like the media, and when I say I'm talking about corporate media, the CNNs, ABCs of the world, they are so afraid of being seen as biased that whenever it's obvious that someone is lying, they can't even say like you're lying. They will just go ahead and say the Democrats said X and the Republicans said Y, and just leave it at that. But anyway.
So you're saying like you don't like if CNN like leans like liberal, they won't admit that Democrats lie, or they won't admit that anyone's lying?
CNN, I think, is the worst. They wouldn't admit that anyone is lying. Like, they wouldn't even say you're lying. They would just say, the Republicans said 1, 2, 3, and then the Democrats responded this way. Like, no, that is actually not a thing. There aren't dead panels that are going to execute people shoot people in the back of the head in Obamacare. They wouldn't say that if the Republicans said. They would just say, well, and the Democrats countered that no, that is not in the bill. That we're just gonna give people patient protect. Like, what the hell is wrong with that? They just play referees. They don't report.
Well, don't you think it's kind of their job to be
referee?
Not to be. I don't know if I'm a fan of them getting into politics, though. So either.
What does it mean to get into politics?
Like, I mean, sometimes I just want what was said and like me to take whatever was said and analyze it on my own. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying they should say, hey, this is a true fact. But if Trump said X, Y, and Z, Trump really did say X, Y, and Z. But that doesn't mean it's true. Or if Biden said X, Y, and Z, it doesn't mean it's true. It just means this is what Biden said.
So, So what I'm getting at, I mean, we may be getting at the same thing. What I'm saying is you should be objective, but you cannot be neutral. So there is a difference between objectivity and neutrality. So if you are I think this is the example I gave. I mean, so I think it was yesterday or the day before. The Houston Astros played, is the Atlanta Braves? I don't even remember. But you can't say the Astros said they won and the Braves said they won. No, like that is neutrality. Like, these people say they won, these people say they won. No, you should say, nope, the person that won is X, Y, or Z. Like, you can't say the Republicans said there are dead panels in here and Democrats said there are no dead panels. Okay, what about the bill? What does the bill say? Does the bill say death panels? Like, does it say X, Y? So that's what I'm saying. You can. I'm not saying you should make stuff up or really editorialize about whatever. You should report the facts. Like,
right.
And that is what they don't do. They do not report the facts. They just play referee. And CNN is the worst in my view. They are the worst. I mean, they are the worst.
Yeah, they're the ones that claim to be all about the facts. Do you still watch CNN or not CNN? Do you watch MSNBC still a lot?
I used to, but I don't anymore. I mostly get my news randomly online, and I just read. Yeah. I read all sorts of stuff, and over the last, I would say, couple of months, especially since the beginning of the pandemic, I have deliberately reduced my news consumption. Like, I've just decided to focus on other things. So, like, I mean, I still follow stuff, and I'm still very much aware about what's going on. But the rabid news, especially political news consumption that I used to have, no longer the case. Like, I just watch random stuff, more documentaries. I like watching YouTube stuff and just random stuff. Listen to podcasts here and there and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's no.
Yeah, I think I'm the same way. Like, I can't. I used to watch like CNN. It used to just be on a lot. I just can't do it. I can't sit there. I don't think you get anything from it. I don't think you just having them talk at you and say the same ridiculous talking points, you're actually getting anything. Your brain is getting anything from that.
No, so I totally agree. I agree. Yeah. So one of the, one of the things that I've been thinking about is, and I was going to ask you this question last week, and we didn't really get to it. Just, that was a long podcast and the first podcast. But, after Trump got sick, right, there were many people that were kind of like, yes, I'm glad this guy got sick. And Twitter started banning, and not even Twitter, some social media platforms started like banning people that were wishing he didn't get well. or
Hmm.
and it got me thinking that one is one thing. I mean, the whole issue of censorship. That's one question. But I was just thinking, like, what are your thoughts about wishing somebody ill? Like,
Yeah. I mean, I think it's fine. I will say, like, I'm a comedian, so I don't think anything is off topics as far as like finding a joke in it. I'm not saying you intentionally try to like hurt people, but I think a lot of the stuff I saw on social media, like there was a lot of like humor in it, and even on SNL, like on their what is that thing they do? That's the weekend update or weekly update or whatever with
yeah,
like
with
Michael
the
Che.
update.
So they were like, look, we're not going to act like Trump getting COVID isn't the funniest thing that's happened all week, right? Like this joke writes itself because there's this guy who has been saying don't wear masks and all that stuff and now he gets it.
Did he
And
though?
what's that?
I said, did he really get it?
I don't know. I mean, are there conspiracies that he didn't and this was like a ploy or something?
Well, I think he got it.
Yeah, I'm not
Um,
a big. I think he got it too.
yeah, he got it. I feel like there's there are so too many people involved that if he didn't get it, it wouldn't have come out. Especially given that White House leaks like a sieve. I don't
Yeah.
think they will be faking that. And
No, they're
and
not. They're not gonna fake that.
but
But yeah,
but the part that I think we may not necessarily know is really what it took, like whatever cocktail of medicine or medication that it took, because they kept saying that he used Regeneron, he used this. I'm like, nah, he's 75-year-old, however old he is, morbidly obese guy with, I don't care what they say. He had some sort of stroke last year when he went to Walter Reed, like out of nowhere, an unplanned emergency, and they were discussing transferring power to Mike Pence. I don't know if you heard about that, where he
I
had to
did
go to
not
the
hear about this.
hospital. Yeah, he went to the hospital. I don't care. He had a stroke or some heart disease. He probably has, yeah, high blood pressure or whatnot. A 75-year-old morbidly obese guy that got corona and was fine in 2 or 3 days. They gave him something that we don't know about. Like they gave him, they gave him. I don't care. Yeah, call me a conspiracy theorist. I do not care. He's the president of the
Yeah,
United States. There is something that he used that is not widely available.
I don't know. I don't.
Yeah,
That's not, that sounds conspiracy theory like, and not saying I can't enjoy a good one, but I don't know how seriously I take that. I feel like I don't know what it is. He defies medicine. He just defies medicine and all things anyway. I
he
mean, he's
doesn't
this guy.
defy medicine. Nobody defies it. See, that is a
No,
conspiracy theory.
no, I mean like he defies what you would think. Like how is he eats terribly, he doesn't sleep. Like the fact that he's even awake all this time and has all this energy, like I'm not saying he's you know outside of the bounds of what's a human being is, um but yeah, like he's I don't know, he just keeps having more energy and this guy the way he treats his body and health, you would think wouldn't even be able to have way more energy than Biden.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I understand what you're saying. Just his presence and existence doesn't make
mhm.
sense.
Right,
His his presence
right.
and
His
existence.
like bold, energetic presence and existence. Like, how is this guy still kicking it? You know, and do it and just he has so much energy. It's insane. I don't know what he's on. He doesn't do any drugs. Apparently, he doesn't drink alcohol.
He doesn't do
Um,
exercise. He doesn't do anything. I mean, what? Yeah,
no,
he always talk about how is yeah, about having great genes and all that stuff, but he's ridiculous. But I his existence though, his presidency, everything,
hmm
I found confounding. Just have you do you know the string theory? Like this is a theoretical physics. thing. Like, have you heard of it before? The string
I've heard
theory.
of it. I couldn't tell you what the hell it means, but I've heard of it.
So, so basically, the basic idea behind the string theory is that, and Neil deGrasse Tyson and a bunch of other theoretical physicists, they talk about this all the time. The basic idea behind it is that this universe is essentially a simulation. Is if you think about a video game, Sims,
Oh yeah, yeah,
where
yeah.
you create your own world. And so if you think
Mm-hmm.
about it from that perspective, the way this is, this universe is, this is someone's video game, if you will, and we are
I
just
understand. I
players
gotcha.
in that video game. So
Yep.
so that's the long and short of it. So I mean, I find those kind of theories interesting. Like, I read that kind of stuff. I watch programs, etc., on string theory, whatnot. But
So do you think
if I were a skeptic, this this really feels like it.
like you're in Trump's video game or someone's video
No,
game?
this is the video. I mean, if I had a video game, isn't this how I would fuck with people's head? Like, I mean, think about it. Like, if this were a video game, and you would have Barack Obama, a black man with the name Barack Hussein Obama, be president, and then be immediately followed by Donald J. Trump. I mean, and then have this last 4 years be what it is. It does not make sense. And then you unleash Corona on people, and then I mean, if this were a video game, could I come up
Yeah.
with a better plot?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a natural tendency for humans to think of their lives and the larger history of the world as like a story and or a video game. And I think this is an interesting story. I think of this as like a season. Like this season of America is insane. Like this is the weirdest. The writers ran out of what to talk about, and they're just making shit up at this point. But I mean, I don't know. I have no idea. It could be a video game. I don't know. But yeah, I definitely think of things like a show or a series or a movie. And this is a crazy movie, and it's getting weird. It's getting real weird.
It's getting weirder and weirder. And what I've been doing is just to think about what other plots. Like, it's like, okay, this is it, right? And then like,
I don't
can
know.
anyone really say that we're gonna go back to no? I'll give you an example. You hear people talk from time to time saying things like, "Oh, I can't wait till 2021. We're able to go back to." I'm like, what do you think is gonna happen in 2021? Like,
Right,
from the perspective of time, on a time continuum, there isn't this demarcation of December 21st and January 1st. Like, that's just something that we
we
made up.
made it up. Yeah.
So like, that is not a thing.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. Like, I can't wait for 2020 to be over. Like, why? It's just gonna be the same shit January 1st. Like, you do realize that, right? This virus isn't gonna be like, oh shit, it's January 1st. I got to get out of here. I don't know what I was doing. I'm just a 2020 virus. Like, the virus doesn't care. Politics isn't gonna just magically get better. Poverty's not gonna be solved. We're not gonna get free healthcare. Like, it's insane to put all of your hopes and dreams on a year, even though I've been guilty of it. Like, I remember when we went into 2020, I was like, oh man, it's a new year, it's a new decade. I even like the way 2020 looked when you wrote it out. I'm like, this year is gonna be great. Like, this is gonna be the best year. And then a couple months later.
If I'm being honest with you, like, I don't know if I think of 2020 as being really any worse than any year. And that's just, quite frankly, because I think because of everything that we've seen, depending on your life experiences, right? Depending on your life experiences and the kind of things you've seen or whatnot. Yeah, 2020 is a little strange, maybe from the perspective of Americans as a collective, but I don't know if it is any worse than any other year. I mean, I can understand how
I know what you mean.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I mean, like, there's way worse things that have happened in the world, or for people that are happening all the time.
exactly.
It's kind of a privilege. I mean, I'm not trying to minimize. Like, yes, people are more stressed than they used to be, and there are real issues that come with 2020. But people are also adaptable, and I think people have been able to adapt quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, like, you know, bad things have happened all the time. This isn't like the worst year in history. The worst years in history, like the world is. I'd much rather live in 2020 than like 1020. Do you know what I mean? Like where there was way more war and like
Or
like
even 1820 for that matter.
yeah, 1920. As a black man,
Yeah.
I'd much rather live in. You know what I mean? Like 2020, I'm chilling. Like I'd
Mhm.
much rather be here than in 1920 or 1820 or 520 or whatever. So, but we are comparing it to our lives in 2019 as Americans in a first world country. We're used to certain things, so there's a lot of things that have been taken away from people. So it's all relative.
Yeah, I mean, it's all relative. And I think also because I feel like things are probably a little more intense in terms of how we feel about it because we have more access to information these days just because of, social media and just, we can just, we have like a crazy um deluge of things that are just being thrown at us. So, and that's because everyone just has access to news. I mean, if this happened in 1920, without internet, yeah, we would still think the president.
Which
But
it kind of did, right? With the
exactly,
whole-
exactly, it did. But you wouldn't have like a president on Twitter. Like the reason,
right. It's just a thing that happened. And also people weren't used to like luxury the same way we were. So it's like, okay, it's another plague. Shit, people are dying. Like they just came through World War One. Like they were used to things being pretty shitty. You know what I mean?
exactly.
Like
I mean, there
millions of
were.
people, just died. So
Yeah, there were many people that were still enslaved at that time. I
yeah.
mean, we will be led to believe that people were free in 1920. No, they were called
Mm-mm.
sharecroppers. That wasn't freedom. Like if you were
Right.
if you were a sharecropper, yeah. So it's yeah. So sometimes you got to put things in perspective. Yes, this is terrible. This whatever is happening right now in the grand scheme of things shouldn't be happening at all. And yeah, and the president of the United States, the amount of time that he spends on the internet, like you would think there would be more he can do to presidenting than just consuming TV and tweeting. I mean, one of the questions that they asked him during that debate was, they asked him about QAnon. Do you know the whole thing about it?
Yeah, I saw
Yeah,
that thing.
and
Yeah.
he pretended like he didn't know. Um,
It's like, dude, just say it's not true. These are the
exactly.
easiest questions. It's like, hey, they said Joe Biden is a pedophile and that he's, like, and he has a plot to make everyone in America a pedophile and have abortions at the same time. Can you denounce that and say that's not true? Well, I don't know who QAnon is or whatever. It's like, dude, just say it's not true. Just say, yeah, no, that's crazy. Just once, but he couldn't do it.
No, he couldn't do it. I mean, yeah. The, but as I was mentioning earlier, the guy is so loaded with this information that the social media platforms are now starting to like flag whatever he says. I mean, that is incredible for the president of any country, talk less of the president of the United States. Okay, putting that aside. Now, one of the things that people have been saying out there is okay, this is censorship and whatnot. So for you, you are a comedian or an aspiring comedian. I mean,
Mm.
what are your thoughts on censorship, right? And I mean, I know that's a super general, broad um, question, but I'm asking that more in the context of not in politics, but more in context of comedy or public
Hmm.
figures, because what has been happening lately is you will have comedians that you're basically telling people that you cannot make certain kind of jokes, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
for better or
Yeah.
for worse. But yeah, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I know I got off us on a tangent with the first question, which was just like, what do you think about them censoring, wishing him, I guess that he doesn't get better. I mean, I think a lot of them were said in the context of jokes. Like, I mean, I think, you know, you can't say, I mean, we all know legally you can't say anything, right? Like you can't yell fire in a crowded theater and all that stuff. I mean, once you, there's some type of responsibility you have if you physically put somebody in harm. But just generally with censorship and with like comedy, like I really don't, I think you should be able to say almost anything in that context. That doesn't mean people have to like you. That doesn't mean people think it's funny. I mean, comedy censors itself in a lot of ways, right? Like the whole point of comedy is like if you say something that's not funny, then you didn't achieve your goal. And that gets censored because people don't laugh, people don't come to see you. So it kind of corrects itself. If you're making jokes about the trans community and people aren't laughing, I mean, it's just not, they didn't find it funny. Like, it doesn't mean you can't make a joke that mentions that community, or you can't make a joke that mentions, black people. You just need to figure out a way to present it in a way that people will find funny. And the same with the Donald Trump thing. I mean, like I said, Saturday Night Live was making fun of the fact that he got it. I mean, me personally, like, I don't actually wish somebody gets sick or dies, but can I can I play around in that space and make jokes? And, I think everybody should be able to do that. I don't know if Twitter should ban that. I mean, Donald Trump, the stuff he says on Twitter, are you serious? Like, the second people make these jokes about him getting COVID, now we have to ban it. But he said like all types of insane things, and he actually has power. Yeah. His words can actually harm people because they can be implemented into policy. Millions of people can be mobilized by them. I think it's hypocritical, but I'm I lean on the side of letting people express themselves, and that doesn't mean you don't get consequences for that. It doesn't mean people don't hate you or whatever, but I think you should be able to express yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying. My one okay, so what about this? Like, a lot of comedians, and an example that comes to mind is Bill Maher, and I think he cries and whines. That's I don't know what you think about it. I feel like he cries too much about
censorship
and cancel culture and whatnot. I don't think it's funny. I think I actually don't think it's funny at all. He's the kind of guy that will crack a joke. I don't know if that's a stick where he cracks a joke and kind of like waits and people don't laugh. And then
they laugh because they weren't laughing.
Yeah,
because it's just awkward.
and it dismisses the audience like, you guys are not laugh. Like, no, if they're not, if they cringe, I mean, it's fine as a comedian. I think if you walk or even if you walk over the line, you go to the line and you walk over the line. If people don't laugh at it, you should have read the audience. You should. That's on you. Like, right. I don't think it's ever really is ever really on the crowd. Like, you should know whether the audience that you're going in front of are gonna laugh at your joke. In the 30s, maybe 20s, blackface used to be acceptable, right? People found it funny and whatnot. Now, today, if you a comedian that put on a blackface and went on the stage,
right?
Maybe there is an audience out there that will find that funny. But
it seems more and more like that nowadays, that there might be an audience that might like that.
I'm sure there is an audience out there that will find it funny, but it is incumbent upon you to find that audience. So if you are that comedian that is now on, I don't know, that is in New York City or Philly, some laugh factory in Philly or whatnot, and they don't find it funny and you are now crying about it, like, That's
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. I think it's on, like, when Dave Chappelle would also cry a lot about cancel culture and I can't say anything. You know, he says I can't say anything as he's getting like $50 million from Netflix to do a special. It's like you can still say whatever you want, and
yeah.
people are laughing. You're getting paid, but there might be some things that people just don't find funny anymore. There are jokes that I laughed at when I was younger and stuff that now I just wouldn't laugh because I've become more educated on things, and I think audiences are becoming more educated on things and sophisticated, and they're just like, yeah, we just don't find those trans jokes. It's just not funny. Like, you can't just say someone's trans and that's a punchline anymore. Like, that's not. We've evolved past that, but that doesn't mean you can't try to figure out another way to make us laugh. But you got to know your audience, and I agree. It is on the comedian, and we do try to go up on that line. We miss sometimes, and and we're like, oh, we take that information in. It's like, okay, that was a little too far. Let me try another path to get over that line. You know what I mean? Like, you have to figure out, how to be funny, and if you can't, then it's on you.
Yeah. So do you think the whole cancel culture thing is not like it's overblown or ridiculous or whatnot?
I think about that a lot, actually, the cancel culture thing. I mean, I think I see kind of both sides. Like, on the one hand, like, I do think with comedy generally, it does self-correct. Like, if people just don't find it funny, like, that's just comedy. Comedy has always been censored. It has always censored things that people don't find funny. You can never continue to do a joke that people aren't finding funny. No one will watch you. Nobody will pay to see that. But on the other hand, like, I do think sometimes, and this is why I don't get on Twitter, but like, from what I've heard is just like, people sometimes get kind of overblown with, like, so-and-so said this, 20 years ago or whatever, or we found this clip of someone, and now, we must cancel them. It's like, well, I mean, maybe just have a conversation with them. Like, did they murder somebody, or did they just say a joke that you find offensive now, 25 years later? Because I guarantee you there's jokes we're telling right now that 25 years later, people are going to be like, you guys laughed at that? Like, what the hell was wrong with you guys? Like, there's jokes. I'm sure there's things I'm saying right now, literally on this podcast. There are things I've said in my comedy sets, that people are like, why were you able to say something like that? And I think people just need to get some perspective with stuff like that. But I also will say, when people get angry on, like, Twitter, I think it's like 5 people. I think articles overblow how many people are actually upset. When you go to, like, real audiences and actually see people in real life, nobody's like, oh my God. Like, no one acts like the 6 people on Twitter who are like, oh my gosh, we have to cancel, I don't know, whoever, because they said X, Y, and Z. Like, people don't actually think like that, I don't think, on a broad scale.
I agree. I feel like Twitter amplifies things in ways that are not necessarily true. So, I mean, going on this theme of comedy and telling jokes and comedians and whatnot, who in your mind is the greatest comedian of all time? Like, who, or ever, at least, when you are, from your perspective, like, especially since you do comedy now, like, I'm not necessarily asking who you're inspired by, because whoever inspires you may not necessarily be in your top 5, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just curious.
Man, that's really hard. Because it's hard for me to, like, differentiate between, like, inspired by, because whoever I think is the best naturally inspires me. Like, okay, oh man,
then
so yeah, I mean, I think probably Dave Chappelle keeps jumping in my mind as, like, the best. He's definitely I feel like he's, like, the best out right now. I've seen him live twice. I actually saw him live in Philly on New Year's Eve. Geneva and I went to a show, and so we literally were introduced to 2020 at a Dave Chappelle show. Like, he did a show from like 10 p.m. or whatever, and until like midnight, and so he kind of like counted down to 2020, and we're like, gosh, this is going to be the best year ever. And then things kind of went to shit. But but yeah, I think Dave Chappelle.
I can think in my head how Dave Chappelle would even react to that.
All right, y'all. Count down.
Like at the end of this year, can you imagine if he does another show and be like, "You sure you want me to do this?"
Yeah, it's all Dave Chappelle's fault if he just didn't count down in Philly. We couldn't believe he was coming to Philly. As soon as I saw there were tickets, I had to get them. But I think he's one of the best. I really like Chris Rock. Eddie Murphy was fantastic. I mean, I think Eddie Murphy's one of the best to ever do it. He had albums back in like the early. He had Raw in like '83 and Delirious in '87, and then he kind of just went off and did like the whole movie thing. But I mean, he was such a good comedian that I remember relating to his stuff when I was like 15 in 2004. He had one of the first albums I ever listened to, and I was like, why is this so funny like 20 years later? And I'm not even like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, but and obviously all these people were inspired by Richard Pryor. So
the reason why I'm laughing at Eddie Murphy is I remember Eddie Murphy coming to America. Remember when you used to do my accent? And I'm like,
yes,
I do not sound that way at all, because Eddie Murphy had the worst African accent in coming to America.
I'm sure all Americans have terrible African accents. Like, if you don't, you know what I mean? It's hard to do a lot of accents unless it's authentic. I'm sure I would get canceled for the accents I did of you. You know what I mean?
God.
Like if people found a clip of me doing, but the funny thing is, when I tell people things you say, though, I still will go into the accent though sometimes because it helps liven the story. People think it's hilarious, and I'm not doing it to like be funny. I'm just like, oh well, this is how he said it, and you need the essence. Yeah. It doesn't sound good if I say it in my voice.
Yeah,
like
you have to capture the essence of the conversation. It's almost like when you're translating, right? And you're translating literally, like,
yeah, it's like it just doesn't sound good.
It doesn't sound, like it doesn't sound. You don't capture the energy and the essence of what. Yeah, I agree. But yeah, I thought you sounded like a terrible imitation of Eddie Murphy in Coming to America. So in other words, your African accent is worse. It's kind of like you imitating Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, I have a bad impression of a bad impression. But people were like, oh man, like seriously, like I've just brought you up like to people who don't even know you. I'd be like, oh, and he said this, and I might just like slip into it really quickly, and they think it's hilarious. I'm like, really? Like I'm just trying to explain how it was said. So
talking about the greatest comedian ever, there was this clip that I came across, and I'm gonna play it for you, and hopefully you can hear it, and we will, I will bring it back. It's a guessing game, so I will have you. I want you to guess who said
who it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So give me a second here. Go.
So for me to be here now, I want to be the best that I can be. Not just in my profession, like I've pretty much proven that I'm like the Michael Jordan of comedy.
Now, guess who that is?
The Michael Jordan of comedy. Whoever this person is not.
He has proven that he's like Michael Jordan of comedy. So this was
that Tommy Davidson?
Was on the Breakfast Club, and he had an interview with
whoever that is not the Michael Jordan of comedy, because that voice is that Tommy Davidson? Is it?
It is Tommy Davidson.
The Michael Jordan of comedy. I mean, look, I'm not saying he. Oh my gosh, the Michael Jordan of comedy. I guess yeah.
I remember them in Juana, man.
I remember, why I know his voice. He played Oscar Proud on the Proud Family on the Disney Channel, and I'm like, is that Oscar Proud? What did they say after that? I can't imagine Charlemagne letting that one go. I can't imagine Charlemagne just looking at him like, he chimed in immediately. Like, what are you talking about? What the fuck are you talking about? Michael Jordan comedy. You got to explain that. Really? You think you're the Michael Jordan comedy? I need you to explain that. Like, he jumped in immediately. There's no way Charlemagne can sit back and just let somebody.
What did Charlemagne say?
I go left. I steal. I don't miss threes. My foul shots are like butter.
You think the Michael Jordan the comedy? That's a big statement.
That's a big statement. The Michael Jordan. Look, I don't think you can't. First of all, I don't even know. That's a wild statement.
I mean, somebody has got to be the Michael Jordan of anything, which basically means in this industry, you're one of the best. Like,
you're one of the best.
Tennis, I'm thinking Serena Williams. Okay,
right.
The Michael Jordan, go ahead.
Michael Jordan of rap. I'm fine with Jay-Z saying he was the Michael Jordan of rap.
Exactly. And you can be fine with other people saying that as well. If Lil Wayne says or Kanye says I'm the Michael Jordan of rap,
yeah, sure. I mean, you're one of the most popular hip hop artists of all time. I mean, you can, with music and comedy and stuff, it's always subjective. But
Bow Wow.
Bow Wow says. Bow Wow had some hits. I'm not gonna act like he didn't, but I'm not gonna say he's necessarily the Michael Jordan of comedy. He might be like the, Muggsy Bogues or something, but like.
So like Michael Jordan of comedy. That's a question I was trying to ask earlier.
Yeah, I think it's because there's that question. Michael Jordan, to me, when I think of like the Michael Jordan, obviously you have to be one of the best, but really you have to be one of the most successful, which it doesn't necessarily mean you're the best technically, but like you have. You're like good all around. You're talented, but you're also good at marketing yourself. A lot of people know who you are. So, when I think of like who's the best at like the art form, I don't know. That's so subjective and such a, kind of ridiculous question when you're talking about something so subjective. There are so many good comedians who are good at what they do, and that's a harder question, like who's technically the best, because everyone's so unique and everybody does their own thing. But when you're talking about like the Michael Jordan, I think of just like who's the most successful, you know what I mean? Like who has like because you don't have to be a comedy fan to know who Dave Chappelle is, right? You don't have to be a boxing fan to know who Muhammad Ali is. You don't have to be a basketball fan to know who Michael Jordan is. You don't have to be a tennis fan to know who Serena Williams is. You don't have to be a rap fan to know who Jay-Z is. Like these people have like transcended their arena, and they're one of the most well-known people in that particular field. And so I would say Dave Chappelle. To me, he's one of the best to ever do it, but that doesn't necessarily mean there aren't other. You can have an opinion and say, oh well, I think Chris Rock is the best, or Wanda Sykes, or whoever. Like so, I don't know. But it ain't Tommy Davidson. He is not. That's all. That's what I do know.
Yeah,
but the thing is, he's probably very like I know. Obviously, Tommy Davidson has been doing comedy for so long. Like, there's no way he's not technically so like leagues and worlds better than I am at comedy, just because he's been doing it for so long. And that's kind of what I mean. Like, he's probably very good at comedy. He's just not. He didn't get he's not at the level of success like Dave Chappelle is at. But like, if you went to a Tommy Davidson comedy show, I guarantee you he could make you laugh. But that doesn't mean he's reached that level of success or notoriety that Dave Chappelle has reached. Because like the more I've been doing comedy and like seeing it, like there are a lot of like people who are very good at what they do. It takes a certain type of person, I think, to reach Dave Chappelle's level. But he could make you laugh if you saw him live. But he ain't Michael Jordan though.
So when it comes to this comedy stuff, I'm curious. So you when you go on a show, you basically write your jokes, right? And then because I feel like there's a difference between someone that is just funny in the classroom, you know what I'm saying, or funny among their friends, and then there is you know there are many comedians that would generally say that was kind of like how they started. Everybody thought they were funny or whatnot, but I think there's a big difference between that just being off the cuff like that, and then translating that into having an hour long or a 15-minute long thing where you are just on stage trying to make people laugh. Okay, so that's one thing. And then for you to be able to do that, you have to be able to write jokes, be able to think about it, be able to, because I don't think I really see comedians or whatnot have like, you know, it's almost like you know how this is going to go in your head and you memorize the jokes. And then there is a second piece of that, which is the delivery.
Yeah.
So it's how do you prepare for that? I mean, and have you had instances where you thought, "Woof, I'm going to kill it with this joke,"
and then nothing, and you just you watch the joke die as you're saying it. Like, God damn it! I thought this was hilarious. What the?
Like you just start sweating right there. Like, woo!
It's the worst.
Now, when you tell this stuff and people don't laugh, you just move on, or what?
I don't know if I'll ever fully get there. And to whoever's listening, to preface it, I've only been doing comedy since I think it's like 16, like maybe about a year and a half, maybe 16 months or so. So I'm not saying I'm an expert on this stuff, but I think eventually, I remember the first time. So I did a stand-up comedy class at the local comedy club here in Philly, the Helium Comedy Club. Chip Chantry was my instructor, and I basically just did the class because I always wanted to get on stage and I just wanted that extra push to do it. And so I, took the class or whatever. And I did okay in the class. Like people were laughing. There was like 6 people in the class. And I'm like, okay, these people are just laughing because, we're in the class or whatever. And then I went out to an open mic and I actually got some like laughs from strangers. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. And then I went to another open mic. I went to like a couple open mics, and then I went to one, and I remember doing a joke that had worked in the class, and it kind of worked on stage, and then the way I delivered it was just off. I was just so off, and it was bombing, and it was like the worst feeling ever. I just started like clenching up. I started going over the joke really, really fast, and like it was a horrible, horrible experience. But then you get over it, and like you realize you survive, and so the more you do that, the more you see stuff bomb, like the more you just like, it is like the easier it is to get through it. It never feels good, but you do get kind of used to it. And one thing I've learned, like I'll work on things with my act. Like, okay, when I do this set, if something doesn't work, I want to be able to bounce back. I want to joke about how it didn't work and create laughter from making fun of the fact that it didn't work. And like, if I do something like that, like I'll check that off. Like, oh, good. That's progress. I'm getting better at doing that as opposed to just freezing or just like rushing through the rest of the joke. Stay in it. Say something like, that didn't work, or, hey, we're all working, obviously we're all working on new stuff here, or whatever stupid comment you have to say. But
so basically it's similar to the way you will have people say you're making your money work for you. So in this case, you are making your jokes write jokes for you.
Yeah, I guess kind of. Yeah. You kind of make the bombs work for you. Like if it doesn't work, all right, let's take that tension, because the audience wants to laugh, right? They don't want you to be unfunny. It's like, I want this to be funny, and if it wasn't, you acknowledge that it wasn't, because there's tension there. Can you break the worst thing you can do is like bomb the entire set and never address it and keep going. The audience hates you. It's like they're not laughing. It's awkward. And it's like, dude, what do you say something about this? Address this. So I remember we saw a comedian and he just told this story and just bombed for the entire set, which I'm not judging because I've bombed too, but he never addressed it. And then the host came up and address the bomb, and the audience just exploded with laughter. I don't think I've ever heard laughter that loud ever. I mean, like, we all just had so much tension, and the host helped us release it because we were all just like, what the hell is going on?
Like
so
cringing up there, you're like, woo.
but he could have gotten those laughs. The comedian could have addressed it. He could have gotten that huge laugh from all that tension, but he decided to just like keep going. And so I learned stuff from that. But yeah, like you got to try to learn, you know, and sometimes things work. There's no better feeling than when you write something, you think it's funny, you say it, and it works exactly how you want it to work. That's the best feeling. That's what keeps you coming back.
So that's funny. So do you now fly and, you know, go to other cities to, you know, to tell jokes to make people laugh, or is this basically local in Philly?
Well, with the pandemic, you know, I mainly do jokes virtually. So I do a lot of virtual stuff. I've done 2 live shows since the pandemic. I did one in like South Jersey and another one right here in Philly. And I was kind of new, so I was just starting to get booked for things like as the pandemic happened. But yeah, no, I haven't like traveled outside of when I went on. I have told jokes in California because when I went to do on a business trip in San Francisco, a guy I knew in Philly knew a guy in like Oakland, and he got me on a comedy show there. And then from that comedy show, one of the comedians invited me to another comedy show in San Francisco. So I actually did 2 shows when I was in San Francisco for a week and had a blast. It was really, really fun. And then when we went over to Australia in February, I looked up like, you know, open mics in Sydney and Melbourne, and I ended up performing in Melbourne and Sydney at just an open mic. Like it wasn't paid or anything, but it was so fun. And it was interesting because it was the same type of thing. Yeah. You know, and I never in a million years would think I would ever do stand up, let alone do it in another country, but it was the same thing. And like, you know, my jokes transferred over. I mean, obviously they speak English, they speak it funny to me, and I'm probably sound funny to them, but the joke still worked. So it was great. I had a good time.
So I know we're talking a lot about you and comedy, but you know, I just think it's interesting to talk about that subject. So when you decide, like, how did you come to that decision in the first place? Because I mean, it's one to be doing comedy, like, you know, you hear all sorts of people tell them they're funny or whatnot. Like, I don't remember you as being a funny guy.
Lies basically like, you're not funny. Why are you doing comedy?
No, you're not funny at all.
That's hilarious.
In real life, I'm like, but this guy has delusions of grandeur. But anyway, how did you, like, what was the catalyst for this? Like, what, like, did your neighbor kick you out of the house someday and you were like, okay, I need to do something with my life, or what?
That's hilarious. Yeah, I mean, well, thanks for saying I'm not funny, but no, I think yeah, I've always been a fan of comedy and stand-up. I think there's a difference between, like, I think people think, like, you know, people who are gregarious and, like, you know, are always just very loud and extroverted and kind of goofy are the people who go into comedy. I find that that's not really true. Comedy has a lot more to do. I mean, you can be that type of comedian and that's fine, but, you know, for me, you know, I'm much more introverted. I think of comedy more strategically. I've always been a fan of the craft of stand-up comedy. So when I tell jokes, you know, with you or family members, like, I think about it, I analyze, like, why is that, you know, kind of like, you know, oh, that got a laugh, like, you know, maybe try doing this. Like, I've always thought of it like kind of analytically, and so I've always kind of wanted to do it. Like, once I started watching stand-up comedy when I was like a 12 or something like that, and I had written some articles online, like some satirical articles, like Onion type articles that you know, did pretty well, like, and I remember like the first thing I wrote some like stupid like Onion type article, but it got like 50,000 views, and I thought I was like, I think this is a funny joke, and so I realized it's like, yeah, or 50,000 reads, and I was like on Medium, and I was like, what the? So people thought it was really funny, like they kept like sharing it and stuff, and so I started doing more of those articles, and like what I realized what I was doing was like I was writing jokes. I mean, I didn't really think of it like that, but I was doing the same process that I'm doing now, which is just like writing jokes and trying to make people laugh. And so comedy is all about like, I understand. I think like I'm someone who like appreciates humor, understands comedy. You know, I'm not like someone who's necessarily the life of the party or, you know, like doing goofy stuff. Like that was never me. But I think a lot of comedians are just very introverted people. Not all, but like I am the type of comedian who's very introverted. I observe things. I think of things in my head, and you know, you have to be kind of looking from the outside. And I think people are like, "Oh, you barely talk. You were so quiet in high school or college or whatever." And it's like, yeah, because I was thinking of funny things about all of you in my head the whole time, and I just never, you know what I mean? Like I'm observing you, I'm making fun of you, I'm judging, I'm critiquing, all of that's going on in my head all the time. So. I don't know. And then, yeah, that's how it was.
Well, that's interesting. That's a cool story. Whatever. Anyway, so I'm switching topics a little bit. I've always wondered, like you know, when you travel, and you're on a plane, and you know the way you're traveling, and you're on a plane, and you have rows of like threes. Or maybe even twos. Maybe you have three. If it is international, you might have 2, 4, or 5, 2, or something. But anyway, when you are sharing, when you have a neighbor, whether right or left, what do you do when it comes to whether or not you're going to put your arms on the armrest?
So I travel a lot with Geneva, so I can be pretty aggressive with the armrest with her. She's pretty passive when it comes to grabbing armrest space. But yeah, I don't know. I try to grab at least one armrest, and then I let the other person. And so if Geneva's sitting with me, I'm
like you know what I'm saying. Like you know, you come in, you have like let's say you have like an older woman or something, or an older gentleman. Just there, and you are just, you know, you just grab the armrest, and where is that person supposed to put it? I mean, do you think about it at all, or?
I'm trying to think. I mean, I guess I haven't sat next to an old person,
not even an old person. He doesn't
just any.
Matter. Yeah.
I don't know. I also try to always get. So when Geneva and I travel, we try to get it so one of us isn't sitting like maybe we'll be like one of us is on the aisle. I don't know. I just don't think about it much.
So
no. What about you? Do you have like rules on armrest space?
So is one of those kind of things that I think about, you know, when I'm traveling. So first, if I'm traveling by myself, unless there isn't, there isn't an available seat, I always want to sit in the aisle, just because, you know, I want to be able to stretch my legs or be able to get out the plane quickly, especially when I know that I might be cutting it late if I have to get off the plane, and it is if it is getting late, etc. So I do think ahead about stuff like that. And when it comes to armrest space, it's one of the things that not bother, but kind of like stresses me out. I'm just like, so this armrest, like, especially when I'm on the plane before the other person. I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? Am I just gonna like sit down and you know, get this thing first or whatnot? Because otherwise, it's just weird to just have your arm kind of like just lingering beside you for like 3
See,
hours.
this is how you create comedy bits, right? So there's something that bothers you and makes you uncomfortable, and then you stay with that, and you just find what's funny about that. Like this is not to get back on comedy, but like, but yeah, like I can see like you being, anyone being awkward about that, but it's something I think because I always usually travel with somebody, it's not as awkward because at the very least I know that armrest we can share. You know what I mean? Like there's one armrest that I don't have to worry about. But if it's just me, and I don't travel alone often.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. Like if you're traveling with your wife or family members, it's not a big deal when you're touching elbows or whatnot. But
if it's just some random dude from Oklahoma
with a MAGA hat,
yeah. Like, I saw a black guy with a MAGA hat on a plane. Like, when was this? I mean, obviously, this had to be before the pandemic. He was like a young black guy.
Do you know?
I was like, is that Kanye West? And it wasn't. It was like it was somebody else.
Do you know any black Republicans?
I do. I'm not like I'm trying to think if I know any well. But yeah, we have people like neighbors, or at least the husband's a Republican, and I think voted for Trump. I'm trying to think if I know. There's not going to be you're not going to find a lot of black Republicans in Philadelphia voting for Trump. I think you're going to find them in the South more often than not, or in the suburbs. But yeah, you're not going to find a lot of young black men in Philadelphia who are Trump supporters. I don't. Do you know any black? You know black Republicans, right? Or
yeah,
black?
not just so. I feel like in my head, to some degree, I am differentiating between black Republicans and black Trump voters, because I think I know some black Republicans that did not vote for Trump and would never vote for Trump. Now, I don't know, and quite frankly, I don't even know if they will ever go back voting Republican. So in my head, I'm still thinking of them as Republicans. And I know black Trump voters. That is a different. See, the interesting thing is in the Nigerian immigrant community, we actually have a ton of we have a ton of Trumpers, like, you know, a lot of Trump sympathizers and Trump supporters, which is really weird if you think about it. And quite frankly, Nigeria is actually, there is this poll that came out maybe last year or something that talked about the most pro-Trump countries, and yeah, Nigeria is like top 5 or top 10.
It's in your DNA. You should be a Trumper.
I'm like, I don't know what it is about it. I mean, there's something that we are just gravitated towards authoritarians or
yeah, that might not be a good thing if you're just used to authoritarians.
Yeah,
like Trump.
But
North Korea also likes him. I don't know.
Yeah, but there's a ton of African countries that, yeah, I don't know why. Like it really confounds me. And there are Nigerians, even immigrants in America that are voting
for Trump. Yeah. I feel like immigrants like Trump a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know. That might just be anecdotal, but
yeah, like the funny thing is, I actually don't think that even some of the folks that I know identified as Republicans before or ever even voted for Republicans. So there's something about him. And so, you know, I remember this particular guy that was feverishly pro-Trump. And I'm like, you know, I haven't talked to him in a while, so I don't know where he is now, given everything that has happened. But for me, if you are pro-Trump today, I don't want anything to do. I don't want to have a conversation with you. I don't want to be your friend. Like I'm not playing that game where people talk about, no, I'm not talking to you. Like I'm not.
Yeah, interesting. You know, I think Trump is someone who people liked before. They didn't necessarily like him, They like the idea of Trump. Like Trump used to be cool before he became president and was putting people's lives at risk. He was like this status symbol. Like he was like a Bentley or something. Like, you know, I remember rappers would mention him in songs. Like Nelly mentioned Donald Trump. There was a song by a rapper named Mac Miller just called Donald Trump. I'm on my Donald Trump shit. Like, and it was a good, like you felt that energy. It felt like you were saying Gucci or Tom Ford. Like it was like this like ridiculously gaudy status symbol thingy. But when he became a real person who was actually the president, that's when a lot of people are like, huh? But I think when people are in like Nigeria or other countries, they're attracted to Trump the same reason we were attracted to Trump before he actually started affecting our actual lives. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so maybe that's what it is more than anything, that people are just attracted to, because if he wasn't the president, he is hilarious.
Right. No, he's funny. I don't care. He's funny. There's a comedian who made a joke about how he's really funny, and but it's true.
Yeah, like I mean, you know, when he goes on stage during his rallies, I mean, that guy will go for like an hour.
He's hilarious. He wants to be a comedian so bad. He is. I mean, it's the same type of high comedians get. He's getting, like, he's telling jokes like every chance he gets to talk like uninterrupted is just a chance for him to perform. Like he just wants to perform.
Can you imagine him basically going on tour? Say if he loses, and
he would sell out comedy clubs across the country. Yeah, he would sell out. He'd be like Kevin Hart. Like he really would.
Like
he'd become the Michael Jordan of comedy. He'd be the real Michael Jordan of comedy.
Would you, like let's assume you own a comedy club or you are a promoter. You know, you're the business, you know, person behind. Would you book him? Like
that's an interesting.
You know, your black ass is gonna make a ton of money.
Like, you're gonna make so much. He could walk into the most prestigious comedy club in New York City today. People would go to see it. They just want to see it. They just want to see it so badly. And imagine if like he wasn't the president, right? Like he didn't. Nothing he said really could affect policy.
You know,
like.
You know, I actually don't think it would sell as much as it would now if he wasn't president, because people wouldn't really see him as a comedian. But because of now he has amassed this following, people are still going to hate him. But he has enough people that, you know, people are going to drive from wherever they are. There are a lot of Trumpians out there. They're going to drive from wherever they are. And I mean, you know, to his show. Like, I don't think there is a big enough stadium that would, you know, that can hold the people that will come see him.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not to minimize the work it takes to be a good comedian. I think but he has instincts of a comedian. Like, I think, you know, he would have to work on his writing and stuff like that to actually make it a real act. But
I don't think he needs to work on anything. I mean,
you think he just goes out?
Yeah. I mean, the kind of stuff that he does, he's all comedy. Like,
right, but like if he doesn't have the context of I'm president,
no,
you know what I mean?
He doesn't have to be, because he only goes there and just makes fun of people anyway. So it will still be observing from the perspective of the ridiculous person, a Twitter troll, and just
I mean, that's true. Like, I will say, there are a lot of people who are like YouTube stars now who can just go to a comedy club and just sell out. They're not even, you know, they just, because people know who they are, and they're like, oh, we just want to hear you talk.
I forget the name of there was this YouTube star. I'm forgetting his name. That started doing like celebrity boxing or something like that. And people will stream and watch this guy. I mean, I'm like, yeah, this is what entertainment is today. He has millions and millions of followers on YouTube, and he's doing celebrity boxing, and people are going to watch. Yeah, I mean, this is the same channel. I think it's called DAZN Dazn that stream like real boxing, whatever. They stream this fight. Fight. So it's
So you think Donald Trump just walks out as he is? You'd be his manager. You'd be his comedy manager. You book him at clubs. But yeah, no, he's he's definitely got the instincts of a performer, and I think that's why people like him and they're attracted to him. I'm still a little confused by immigrants in this country, a little bit, but I also think they're just they're something about America. Trump is very American in a lot of ways. He's kind of gaudy and loud and arrogant. And I think that thing that can attract immigrants to America, like Donald Trump kind of embodies that. Like that, I don't give a fuck. I'll say whatever. I'm rich. I can do whatever. Like that's kind of America. You know what I mean? So if you're attracted to this country, I can see how Donald Trump can be attractive to you too.
Yeah, like I think I totally understand what you're saying. Because I can see how he represents success and first class service or what, especially if you don't know him. Like I can definitely see how you what word is that? Like I can see how you think he embodies he embodies the reason why you came to this country in the first place. And I think the same reason why a lot of people watched his show that time, The Apprentice, because they had this idea of who they think he is. Like Donald Trump, you'll fire this rich guy, and then
he's a businessman.
He's a businessman, and
it's so ridiculous, which is so ridiculous, right? Like it's just so ridiculous that to think he actually deserves anything, or he worked for any of that, right? It's like when the people are like praising. What do you think about Kylie Jenner, she's like a billionaire now or something like that? And people are like, oh my gosh, she's self-made. Is she? When you start off at when you start off that famous, I'm not going to say you're self-made. I'm not saying you didn't use your opportunities, but you started on third base. You kind of started running to home plate, and then,
I mean, I guess it depends on how we define self-made. If we are saying self-made means you did not have this before, from a strictly speaking, like you didn't have you didn't have $1 billion before. Doesn't matter whether you started from 900 million and now you now have $1 billion. You say, yes, I'm self-made. That's one thing. Yeah, but where do we draw that line? Like if you have $1 billion, you know what I'm saying? Like if you have $1 million, does that count? Like if you have 100 million, if you started with $1 million, started with 100 million. So for me, I think it's a ridiculous. I understand why, I wouldn't think of someone like that as self-made, at least in the traditional sense, but I don't think it's worth even people crying on Twitter about it.
I don't even remember which way they were crying about it. I think they were just agreeing
that she's not self-made. Like that was what it was. It was basically like no, they were. I think what happened was Forbes magazine named her the first self-made
billionaire or something like that.
Or the youngest female self-made billionaire, something like that. And people were not too happy with that. So
yeah, I'm still impressed by, like, I'm still like good for her, and that I'm impressed by that family generally. Like, good for figuring out how to do that. You know what I mean?
They monetized social media before people even figured out what social media was.
I'm so impressed. I have problems posting things. Like I have, you know what I mean? Like I'm shocked. It's just amazing that they can do that. But there are definitely degrees of like what I'm impressed by. Right. I don't think no one's self-made completely. Everybody had help some way, but some people had way more help than others. So I'm going to be more impressed the less help you had. But everyone had help.
Exactly. So that was why, I kind of said earlier that where are we starting from? Are we starting from $1 million? I mean, if you Master P, like you started from
Master P,
$1,000.
Right. Like I'm more impressed by Master P than I will be of Kylie Jenner, but I'm more impressed by Kylie Jenner than I am of Donald Trump. Because I do think Kylie Jenner has innovated and created something, while Donald Trump literally just was a rich white guy who his dad did all, his dad kind of just put him in positions. Like, it's like if It's just nepotism. You know what I mean? Like he literally just like, okay, we're gonna put you in this position and we're gonna pretend you're this successful guy. He's playing. He's like made up. It's a costume he's wearing. It's not real. I don't know.
Okay, talking about ridiculous guys. Did you see Kanye West's political ad? He had he's running for president, right?
Yeah. You see his first rally where he was crying. Like,
oh my god!
I mean, how much of it that was hilarious. That was, but he has a political ad out now.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, Donald Trump. Yeah. I will say this: Donald Trump winning president. He opened up doors for all types of people. I feel like Donald Trump opened the door for anyone to be president. You know what I mean? It's not out of the realm of possibility that in 5 years or 10 years, Cardi B will be president. Like, that's not out of the realm of possibility. It's not. There's no one you can tell me where
I agree with you. I agree with you. Like, I don't think, yeah, I agree. Let me see. This may be it, but let me know if you can hear it. Yeah, I don't think it is. Let's see if we can have
America. What is America's destiny? What is best for our nation, our people? What is just, true justice? We have to think about all these things together as a people. To contemplate our future, to live up to our dream, we must have vision. We as a people will revive our nation's commitment to faith, to what our Constitution calls the free exercise of religion.
Why is he not looking at the camera? What's he looking at?
I don't know. Is this? I can't help but think this is going to be a dope music video. like this isn't a real ad. I just expect like a beat to drop and like violins to start playing and
to help each other, to lift up each other, our fellow Americans.
I can't believe he got people, like real people, like that guy to do this. You know what I mean? That's what's so funny to me, that like real, like Americans got in this commercial. We're like, yeah, sure, you can videotape me watering my garden. Like that's.
We will be the kind of nation, the kind of people God intends us to be.
Oh my God, that's enough. Great.
Yeah, that is. But again, it's like it's so funny because like even with Kanye, it's like I have to take that way more seriously than I would 10 years ago. I'm not saying I'm like thinking Kanye is going to win, but you do have like I remember I think it was like Forbes or some legitimate publication wrote an article where they were like talking about how Kanye could potentially affect the election. Not saying he would win, but like, are there enough people who would vote for him that would sway the election? And that sounds ridiculous. That would sound ridiculous 5 years ago, but nowadays, is it?
So, I mean, the one thing that I think of when it comes to Kanye is it's of course, now that we are now voting and all of that. So talking about voting, I actually went to vote on Thursday. Yeah.
All right. How long did you have to wait in line?
Actually, it wasn't long at all. It was like 10-15 minutes, and that was because we got there really early and went in right away. And within, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, we're out. And but by that time, the line was already long. So, so yeah. But, you know, there is an option in there to write in a vote. I mean, a president or something like that. And I know that's what Kanye has been saying, that, you know, write me in or whatnot. But I have to agree with you. Like, I don't think the idea of Kanye being president is so far-fetched anymore, especially given the ridiculousness that we've seen over the last couple of years. But with that being said, I feel like if you know, there was a time when a lot of Democrats or left-leaning people, they were crying about, oh my God, Kanye is not running for president. They were, quote unquote, afraid that Black people were actually going to vote for Kanye. I mean, like, you were going to lose the Black vote for Kanye. Like, you think nothing of Black people. Joe Stein or Ralph Nader Like,
Yeah.
just because the guy is famous, you think, and he's black.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't do that, but
It's just like
I mean,
because Dr. Dre's a doctor, you let him do surgery on you.
but think about okay, but like let's think about this though, right? So Kanye, we all think Kanye's kind of he's a crazy person. His political ideas are he's just way too unpredictable. But what if it was like somebody sensible? You know what I mean? Like what if it was a famous person like Jay-Z or something, or Beyonce or something? Like what if it was somebody or even someone who might be even more political, like John.
If it was someone like that, I've always felt like this job of being a president and people talking about 3 a.m. phone call and all of that stuff, I've always felt like that job is overrated, the way people try to portray it. And I've been proven right by having Trump.
Oh, yeah.
President. Like, I'm like, I can be president. You can have high school senior go be president. Yeah. Like, I don't know why I think there's an age.
Yeah, you have to be 35.
That is ridiculous. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. Like, when I was 25, I could have been president of this country. Like, that is absolutely ridiculous. There's no reason why that age. With Trump, cognitively, is not older than 13 max.
Right. Oh, max for sure. Max. For sure. He's probably like 7, maybe.
So if you have, at the oldest, if 13-year-old running this country, right? I mean, really, do you think I could do any worse than this?
Oh, I totally believe it. The funny thing is, when Trump became president, I was like, wow, every single person I know in my life could do a better job. Like, I would vote for every single person I know first. I'm not even kidding. I couldn't think of a single person who wasn't maybe like, a toddler who I'm like, I would have that person. I'd rather that person be president. I never in my life felt so confident that I could be president. I was like, oh, wow, I could totally do this job.
So
and I'm an idiot.
It's the same way I feel about quote unquote presidenting. That is the same way that I also feel about, corporate America in many ways, and essentially having opportunities to climb up the ladder. They would typically, you will hear corporate America say, oh, we don't have qualified black people to do X, Y, or Z. That's why we're not. No, you can go get relatively, you can go get like, I don't know, a black professional that's like 30 years or a couple of years out of grad school, make him CEO and see what happens. Like,
are you talking about yourself? You could find a Nigerian in Houston.
For someone to just, but that's really what happens, right? People people don't want to give. That is what happens when you get the benefit of the doubt and people give you a chance to do X, Y, or Z. When you think about Ivanka Trump or Don Jr. Eric Trump, those motherfuckers, like, they are executive VPs of the Trump organization. They say it's a multi-billion-dollar company. Like, why?
I know. Yeah.
Like, and they're there. They just came out of nowhere. So you have this nepotism. So that's what I'm saying. To me, there is a threshold that you just need to have or to reach from the perspective of just having common sense, have a business sense, and just know a few things. You can read a financial statement. You can, the difference between a balance sheet and, a cash flow, whatever. You just know those basics. You don't even have to be versed in them. Trump doesn't know that shit. Like, he doesn't know what a balance sheet is. He doesn't. I don't think that guy has ever opened a 10K or 10Q before. Like, he's not
and not looked at it seriously.
So yeah, like, so when people are talking about, I think the issue is giving people opportunities. That's really what it is. And you can promote whoever you want to promote. You just don't give people the chance. Like, I'll give an example. You remember in the NFL, they used to say there aren't qualified black coaches, etc., etc. When Pittsburgh Steelers appointed Mike Tomlin as the head coach, he was, I believe, 32 or 33 years old or something like that. Yeah, like maybe you.
Yeah, he was pretty young.
Yeah, he was pretty young. Like,
yeah, let me see.
you could potentially say at that time that he wasn't qualified. Like what has he done to to deserve that? But obviously, he's won. I think how many Super Bowls has he won? I know he's won at least one.
Yeah, he's won one. Youngest
Okay.
head coach to win the Super Bowl. Wow.
So that was it. He just wanted somebody, like all that needed to happen was someone to give him an opportunity. That was it. I mean, can you imagine how many other 30-something-year-old coaches and other black professionals or whatnot. So I think everything translates to being the head of a company. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg supposedly, there is no reason why you couldn't have a black 20-something-year. And there are black CEOs that started companies at a very young age, and they go on to, we just don't hear about them. They go on to manage big companies. So yeah, it is all about access to opportunity. It's not about anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think, there are barriers for people to get farther in business than there need to be. There, the barriers can be too high for things that aren't as difficult as we make them out to be, right? Like, I think we've all gone, like, we've gone places or seen places and it's like, okay, this isn't as hard as everyone made it out to be. Like, sometimes, even like doing your job, you're like, like, is this that hard? Like, and there are things that are very hard. Not very, but like, there are things that are challenging about my job, but like, there are other things where I'm like, like,
so, I think I have some delusions of grandeur, and maybe this is why growing up in Nigeria, maybe this is what growing up in Nigeria did for me, where I never thought there was nothing I couldn't do. Like, at 22, like, even though I was a super shy person, I never thought I couldn't run Microsoft. Like, I still feel like that today. Like, if somebody were to call me up today and be like, hey, this is this Fortune 100 company, we want you to be the CEO. I feel like I would be able to do it and do a fine job. Like, I'm not going to run into the ground. We're not going to file for bank.
I will say that's an admirable quality about you that I don't necessarily relate to all the time, but I have tried to take pieces of it because I think it's a right attitude to have, where it's just like, you put things in perspective. Like, I remember even with law school, like, I'm freaking out and you're like, it's not that big. It's not that big of a deal. Like, and like, you'll be aight. Like, and back to the whole theme of the podcast, you be aight.
Yeah.
And which is hilarious, but I do think that is healthy to have some dose of that, where it's like, yeah, I'm sure I could do that, or whatever, it'd be fine. And if I can, you'd fire me, and then whatever, we'd move on. But
exactly, I've never really worked. And this would be interesting if anyone that I've ever reported to hear this. Like, I've never really reported to anyone that I thought, wow, that is a smart person. That like that I was impressed by. Like, the partners that I used to work for when I worked at a law firm, I never thought, I'm like, yeah, like, you have just done this longer than I am. But if I was the main partner tomorrow, like, I always felt like, well, I don't necessarily have to figure this shit out. I can delegate. Like, I go, okay, you now have to do this. Like, it's almost like if you go in house, right? Like, what are you doing? You call and you don't know stuff. You just call someone up and be like, hey, now do X. So that's how I've always felt about it. Like, yeah, like, the partner, like, yeah, you've been doing this for 30 years. Yeah, I can be a partner. I can still manage you if if it comes to it. Like, I can do your job better than you. Like, sometimes you just give an assignment. You don't even give context. Nobody even knows what you're supposed to do. And yeah, especially in the law firms, a ton of shitty managers out there. And
so do you think that attitude and that confidence comes from, is that a Nigerian thing, or is that a specifically you thing, do you think?
So I don't know. Maybe there has to. It's probably more of a me thing, more so than a Nigerian thing. I know that a lot of Nigerians have this fake bravado about whatnot, but for me, I genuinely believe that I can do these things. Like it's not, and I don't think it's so far fetched. You know what I'm saying? Like I genuinely believe I don't believe that you have to know all of these things. And I think, like I said earlier, I think everything that we've seen around us and the way people run their companies and all of that stuff basically validates that theory. Like you see people all the time that that have no business doing this thing, but for whatever reason, or they're not impressive at all, and they're just there. Maybe they have some charisma or whatnot, and they just get all these opportunities. Yeah. So I don't know if it is a night. I think it's probably more of a me thing because
Did your parents tell you? Sorry, I was just wondering. Did you think like your parents like played an influence on that, or did people like when you were growing up in Nigeria where they're like, "Oh, you're smart," or or you're capable? No. Did you?
I actually was not that smart guy. At least in the way that people would define smart. Like I was never like top anything. I was a good writer even in high school, and I always knew that. Even now I think I'm a pretty decent writer, and I think I have a wild imagination. So to some degree, maybe I let my imagination take me places, and it is now real in my mind that I can do this thing.
You're Donald Trump. You're the Nigerian Donald Trump. This is how presidents get started. I can do this.
Like I can't tell you how many times I mean the kind of stuff that I've thought of. But yeah, if I see a problem, like I will always try to fix it. Like it's just one of those things. I don't think my parents weren't particularly entrepreneurs or anything like that, or necessarily like the lessons that I learned from my parents weren't direct lessons. Like I can't really, at least in this specific instance, I can pinpoint it. One thing I would say is this. I remember one thing I've always had was to have an eye for opportunity. I remember when I was young, and I always forgot this story. I mean, it wasn't until recently that I kind of remembered it. Recently, a couple of years ago. The very first kind of like audacious thing. And I'm thinking of it as audacious now, given the circumstances at the time. Growing up in Nigeria, you know, my brother, who was just a year behind me, so he was good at like maths, like arithmetic. I think that's what we called it at the time. So I was good at math, and I was good at like writing and reading. And it clicked to me. I must have been like 9 or 8. It clicked to me that wait a minute, we had a bunch of folks both in my class and in his class that were struggling with these subjects. Why don't I start an after school program and we teach them stuff that we knew? And people came. I mean, their parents believed that, oh, these guys, and like I said, I wasn't number one in anything. I just knew that I was good at this thing and I could potentially teach people, and people believed it. And that was how I kind of like made extra money, lunch money, for some time. So it's always, so now that I'm thinking about it, that is crazy to think about, right? Like for like a 9-year-old, you just say, oh, I'm going to start this. I didn't think of it as a business at the time, but like, I'm going to start this thing. I see this problem here. I could potentially manage it. So that has stayed with me.
That's pretty much you. You could have been telling me that you did that 6 months ago. Like that, I feel like you would have been the same guy your whole life.
Yeah,
I think so. There's nothing different between you now and that 9-year-old with the writing business. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. I remember. Yeah, I remember even my teachers at the time, I wasn't super impressed with them. Like they never, like I never, like I don't think there is any teacher that really inspired me. Like
I love this attitude. This is the UBI attitude. I find it so entertaining, but so inspiring and hilarious all at the same time.
Yeah,
it's just like you just never were impressed. You're just like, I'm not impressed. Like, I'm not impressed by America. Like I'm here, but I'm not impressed by it.
I would hear people say things like, "Oh, when I was in 2nd grade, like Miss Johnson, did this to me," and I'm like, man, I did not have that. Like I just told my teachers, like none of my teachers was memorable. Like I remember them for other reasons. Like I remember this particular teacher was Mr. Benson. But I remember him just for other reasons. It was just
just because he had like a peg leg or something.
But I don't remember him for anything like he was good or like wow, like it was this brilliant person.
That's hilarious. I had a teacher, and I had a couple of teachers that inspired me. Not quite the same. Like Miss Johnson saved me from a fire, and when I was in second grade, not quite that, but like in college, I like writing. I think we probably share that. Like I really like writing, and that's probably why I'm a lawyer. It's why I do comedy. Like comedy's just writing. But in college, I had a professor who really pushed me. Like I remember, like we would write things, and he would give us an opportunity to turn in one thing, and then he would just mark it up like crazy, like just like the whole thing would be read. But what he was trying to do is just teach us, like, because I don't know, like I don't think people teach writing well in like public, like before you get to college, you know what I mean? And like so we're just bad writers, and he just like completely obliterated it and like just taught me that writing, the process of writing is about editing. It's like he kind of got me on that whole journey of trying to become a better writer, which I think you're never done with, but you're constantly editing. And like I kind of became obsessed with just editing, whether it's in my mind or on the page. And so I think he helped me like realize, oh, writing is something that you can always get better, can always be tighter.
So this is the thing. Like how people talk about writing, and I don't know if they conflate writing with storytelling. So because like when people say you could be a better writer, does that really mean that you could be a better storyteller? Because for me, I've when I was younger, I've the way I've gotten better at writing, at least in my mind, I think, is to actually write more directly and more simply,
right?
Like more simpler than I used to. Like I don't use any crazy words or whatnot, and I feel like even if you think about the art of communication, I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure there are people that study this. I feel like the more basic you are in terms of the words that you use and how you communicate them, the more people are going to absorb them.
Absolutely, yeah.
The difference is now in the actual stories themselves, like the actual storyteller. Because you could be a good writer but be a bad storyteller, and
right,
like
yeah, I guess I see. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I mean, and that's part of it too. I think, obviously, like that's the first step. Like, that's an important step, is like getting your writing tight, like making it as you got to get the point out as quickly as possible, right? And then with the storytelling piece, it's like you can have a good story, but you have to have the tools to be able to write it well.
Right.
There needs to be no extra words with the story. You can still be a good storyteller. It has to be tight though. Same with joke telling. There needs to be no extra words. You got to get to that punchline or whatever as soon as possible, get to the conclusion, the argument, whatever. But I think that is a different storytelling. That's interesting. I never really think about storytelling. I mean, obviously, like I've done it. You do it in law, you do it in business, you do it everywhere. I mean, you do it even when we're writing a write-up for our podcast, like this episode. It's storytelling. What was this podcast about?
Exactly. I mean, for me, that is how I've started thinking about anything I write. Like, I don't even think about it in terms of the writing itself. I just think about it in terms of storytelling. And when I'm editing, that is what I'm editing for. Like, okay, does this weave together with that? Does that make sense? Do these stories just, like the sequence of the stories and all of that stuff. So that's kind of like how I look at them, and that is how I edit, if you will. So,
that makes sense.
But yeah,
even when you're writing an email, like you're trying to like summarize what happened in a meeting or something, you're trying to tell the best story. Like It's trying to, you got to make sure this sentence, you want them to read it and just be like, oh, it's so clear and I get it. And this happened and this happened. And, this is great. So
And
we're
I mean, and kind of like wrapping this up somewhat, and I think that is going back to Trump. I feel like that is kind of like why he won, or no, why, but one of the reasons why he won was because of he's a good storyteller, and when his delivery is just so he used plain words. Like I don't think he has more than like 10 words in his vocabulary. Like
Yeah.
Ugly, like it is so great. Like is those are the only things that he says. Like it doesn't matter what the question is. It's just even the phrase "Make America Great Again." Like it sounded. I remember thinking that was a ridiculous catchphrase, but for whatever reason, it caught on with people, and yeah. So I think the art of communication, the art of storytelling. I mean, if he boiled down his whole essence when he ran for president into something, the whole drain the swamp thing. I'm different. These guys, you guys are suckers to these guys. Like they've been, and the way he talked as well. He talked like the common person. The way you hear people talk in the streets, like politicians are so used to coming in and talking like a robot, like Wolf Blitzer.
Yeah.
But he came on and it was just refreshing. If you take out your biases and you just think about the way he talked, you will have to appreciate that. Because
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree.
yeah,
I think I mean, yeah, he has terrible ideas and he's not good for this country. But yeah, take all that stuff out. You'd much rather hang out with Trump than Joe Biden. Like if if you're not talking about politics and you're just like shooting the shit with somebody, who would you rather hang out with and do a podcast with? Trump or Joe Biden? Like it's not even close. I mean, I don't want to talk to Joe Biden. Like I don't even want to hang out with. I mean,
I had a conversation with someone recently. Remember this past week they had those dueling debates, where I mean they're not even debates, like town halls. Like Trump had his own town hall and Joe Biden had his own as well at the same time. And I was thinking to myself, like, okay, I asked someone this question: if somebody put a gun to your head and says you have to watch one of these two, which one would you watch? I'm like, it's not even a question.
It's not even close. I'm not watching. It was funny because I watched Trump's first, and then I went to Biden's. I only went to a 7-minute segment of Joe Biden's debate, and I was like, this is excruciating. But I watched like 30 minutes of Trump in a blink of an eye, and I mean, and the only reason I turned it off was because I had to do work or something. It wasn't because I wasn't interested in what he was going to say next.
Paint dry. Like it was,
oh my!
Like I saw a few clips of it, and for me, I was just like, "Wow, this is that was excruciating." I'm like, it's almost like you are at some senior facility and they're telling them bedtime stories or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. It was just really, and and Trump will play up that Biden's not mentally sharp and all that stuff, and after a while, I'm like, is he? Like, I don't know. Like, he's just, it was so boring and I don't know. Trump is the fun granddad, but he says a lot of racist and terrible shit, but he's still funny. And you know what I mean? Like, and that's, I don't know. I just hope people vote for, they make the right, intellectual decision and their emotions don't get caught up in it.
Yeah. Well, on that note, we will come to the end of our show. And so Manny, what do you have to tell the people?
That was a fun second episode, and we will be guiding you through the rest of this month as people try to vote and all that stuff. But I had a good time, heard a lot of good stuff, and there's more where that comes from. But we'll see you guys later.
See y'all later. Bye-bye.
Peace. You be aight.